Okay, so we're going to move on to our next panel, which I'm going to moderate. And it's all about emerging markets. We have two panelists from across a different pond. No, they're not even across the pond. They're just south of where we are. Sorry, I'm looking for my notes. We have one panelist coming here from Mexico, another one here from Argentina, and we have another one who's been working all over the world. So I want to bring on stage first Linda Franco. She is the co-founder and CMO of Machina, coming from Mexico City. Please come on stage. Next, we have Alexandra Johnson. She is the managing director of DFJ Aurora. She is based out here. Please join the stage. And glad we found Sally Berman, the co-founder of Wormhole IT, coming here from Argentina. Sorry about that. That's okay. Test, test. All right. Oh, finally get to sit. That feels good. So, welcome. Thank you to the panelists flying all the way here, literally for this conference. And no, we did not pay them to be here. So I want to get started at the beginning. So the truth is, we all know this. Every startup needs to go global from the get-go. For those of you who already have something out there in the App Store or online, you're looking at your traffic, you're looking at your downloads, they're from everywhere. But so many of us are still based here in the US. So we want to talk a little bit about emerging markets. Do you need to be there? Do you need to just be here? How does it all work? There have been so many hot waves of international. At the beginning of, I don't know, a while ago, it was all about India. India, everyone has to be in India or go to India or target Indian markets, which was fine until people realized how bad the infrastructure is, which kind of stopped a lot of people. And so it's not so hot. It's still growing, of course, but not the hype that it was before that. And then quickly after that, everyone was saying, you got to be in China. You got to go to China. No, China, okay, but nobody really can do business in China. So is this for real? Like, do we need to be international or not? So I think the macro view also, for now, what we want to look at today is Latin America, because that's what everybody's saying, Latin America, Latin America. So is this for real in Latin America? Because the reality is that we hear in the news is sometimes we're talking about Mexico and we're hearing about the drug cartels, or we're talking about Argentina and the political situation. So should we be paying attention to these things when at the same time in Latin America, when you look at, if we can get to the next slide, the adoption rates of mobile phones, it's actually going to be over 130% in 2014, I think it is. So you can see that slide that says that people in Latin America are adopting technology. So if they're adopting technology, yet there's things going on in these countries, what should we be considering? So that's my little intro to move on to the panel. So my first question is directed both at Linda and Sally. Looking at the challenges of working in country, tell us a little bit about what it's like to work where you work in Mexico and Argentina as female founders of technology startups.
Okay, do you want to first? Okay. Well, it's a little bit different from, to do business here in the US. Our company is based in Buenos Aires. We have our headquarters there, but we also operate in more than 10 countries, and we have our office here. So we've been, going back and forth a little bit. So the first things we notice about, it's the cultural difference. Doing business in Latin America is great, but you have to know the people. And I mean, in our case, it's our backyard, so it's easy for us to do business, but people want to get to know you. They want to know that you are for real. So it happens pretty often that they might knock at the door and say, hey, hi, I'm interested in what you're doing. And it's like, yeah, but this is an office, it's not an open, you just cannot.
Because your product is online and people are coming to your door.
Exactly, and the only thing they want to do is chit-chat a little bit, have a coffee, and understand that you're for real, and then you'll be there. So first of all, everything is based on relationship. Also is based on, trust you, on trust, so you have to work a little bit on that. And it might take a while, because in fact, I would probably say 90% of the population in the US have a bank account and can pay online. Well, you cannot do that in Latin America, or at least not all of them. So you have to figure out new ways to do the same. I mean, e-commerce is growing everywhere there, but you have to have local payments, local people, local tech support, people understanding their language, people, hanging the phones and call them. And that kind of things happens pretty often, which is totally different from doing business here, where you just go online, you pay, and you just call someone if you have an issue.
Linda? Can we get the mic on?
We're a company that's based in Mexico City, and we've had an opportunity to go to different countries, which is a good thing for us because our company is really focused on the international side. And
In one sentence, tell us your company.
Well, I do wearable technology. I integrate technology into clothing, and for example, Mexico City is still not that ready for that kind of product, but it's something that they do like, and something that we have experienced from being in different events and countries, like Sally said, the culture. But for example, we are already tagged. It's like, because you're Mexican, what are you doing here? I can't believe you come here like intact from drug lords. Or do they really speak English in Mexico City? How come you're building technology from scratch? Because are you producing? Where are you manufacturing? All the kinds of things. And it's kind of interesting to come by with these kinds of barriers. But we're getting through it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear. And just quickly, with your company, Sally, it is a solution. Just tell the audience what it's about.
Yeah, we do web conferencing and web collaboration products, mostly for emerging markets and focusing on the educational market.
So imagine you had a web conferencing startup and your customers came to your door. That would just be really funny.
No, it's weird.
kind of
It's
awkward.
funny. In fact, we had to take our address out of the website because it happened a couple of times, and they were just developers at the office, so they were like, "Yeah, well, there's no one at the sales team right now that can help you," so it happens.
It's very interesting. But so of all these challenges we have, there are benefits, which is why you are still in country, the both of you, as opposed to having moved to the US entirely. So Linda, tell me a little bit about some of the benefits you're receiving by staying in Mexico.
Okay, one of the benefits, which is the best one because I make clothing, right? So we have to manufacture. There is a really good hand in Mexico City. There's a lot of interesting fabrics in Mexico City. For example, I don't know if you knew, but the #1 producer of denim is in Mexico City, and they produce like denim for Levi's, Lucky Brand, and we have the opportunity to work with them, to go to the factory, see the whole process and the finishings, which is something good and a low cost for us. So in the end, we have a cheaper cost than producing in the US or else.
And for you, Sally, the benefits?
Well, I would say there's two things. First, low cost. As she said, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but having a company with 18 developers in Latin America, or at least in Argentina, it's an annual run rate of around 400K US dollars. 18 people. So I would say that here you'll pay for two only. Maybe less. So on one hand is that our schools are really good, our engineers are awesome, and they are pretty clever, and they are working really hard on and they love and they are passionate about technology. And on the other hand, it's something that it might be tricky at the very beginning and even might see as something bad, but the truth is that there's no venture capital industry and there's no money to invest in technology. If there are money, it's for real estate or beans, which is in fact what we do for traditionally. So in our case, it forced us to go out and bootstrap from scratch and build a company, self-funded, being creative, and in fact, our investors were our customers, and cash flow is king. So it's great because in a way, now if you had to scale up and growth sales worldwide, you're in a very good position to face terms and ask for money.
Excellent. So on the topic of money, let's talk to Alexandra. Alexandra is with DFJ Aurora, and as I mentioned, she's looking for investments outside the U.S. So what does an investor who doesn't invest in the U.S. look for in companies such as the one sitting on this panel here?
Well, we actually invest everywhere, in California, in Europe, in emerging markets. And I run the Russia fund of the DFJ network, and I'm privileged to work with partners from Brazil and China, Korea, Vietnam. So we talk to each other. And let me tell you that emerging markets are very similar in what they experience and the new trends, be it the herd mentality of investors going into one direction and then following absolutely opposite direction, like from alternative energy several years ago. Now it's all about social networking, but let me tell you, that is yesterday's news too. And nobody knows what the next big thing will be, and that's where the investors will probably go. And if you think that there are not enough female entrepreneurs, if you look at the female investors, that's probably, it will be even less. And we can talk about that, but just listening to my fellow panelists, I would say if a company wants to compete only on price and say that it's cheaper, like whatever you do is cheaper, it's probably will not be enough for us as an investor to look into it, because that is something which can be easily replaced. And emerging markets, when, to your point, it was India, then it was China, companies who are staying in those geographies usually find either clones of what works successfully in the US, and they know there will be a huge growing market where it can be sustainable, or the unique technology will come out of those markets. But if we look closely, there's a secondary innovation and a primary innovation. And the secondary innovation is really easy, finding all those Groupons of the world, or even clothing companies, you can do shoe companies, whatever, but there's Zappos, and then there are millions of clones around the world. Primary innovation is something which is unique. And if you think you're building a company which is based on a unique technology, that's when you build it from day one as a global company, because your market will be around the world. And I happen to believe that we cannot afford not to build a global company from day one. And as an investor, that's what we probably will be evaluating. 3 things, right? That is how big your market is, what portion of that market you think you can take, and do you have a team capable of executing on your vision? Not to say that, in emerging markets, there are definitely complications and specifics, but let me tell you first what is common for all the entrepreneurs, and we do see them around the globe. A real entrepreneur is unstoppable, and I personally don't care if it's male or female, and I have to say that is the first female conference I actually attended, because it's really, if you're an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. I don't divide poets or musicians into male and female people, and entrepreneurs are the same way. So to me, if we're interested about talking about the companies, then I will be happy to continue.
Yeah, so let's take that with that point that you and I talked on the phone earlier. You mentioned the unique technology is super important versus the land grab. So if a company is starting here, right, what should they be doing specifically to think about being global?
Well, it depends on the sector. I happen to have one of my favorite female entrepreneurs, and she happens to be a female. She started talking about the cloud computing several years ago, before the term was even accepted. And it was clear that what she does, actually, if it works, it will work everywhere. But unfortunately, she couldn't find investors in the valley, and going up and down Central Road is something which is not fun. And our fund invested in her several years ago, and that would be an example that from day one, even though the money came, that particular investments came out of the Moscow fund, but she has clients now in Silicon Valley, and she's signing up pretty big accounts. Why was it possible? Because from day one, her company was built as a global company. And that's what you need to know. Now, if you are in a niche market and you know that what you provide to your customers probably will be unique to your place, you can expand into other Latin American markets, but you probably will not be able to bring it to Silicon Valley because the competition here will be humongous. So my advice to an entrepreneur will be to know your market and know your product. So and if you have a chance to go outside the local market, absolutely do it, but always with a partner. Do not go to Brazil, just somewhere from San Francisco or Mexico, definitely not to Russia or China.
So essentially, if you don't have a unique technology, the best way to grow is through partnership or acquisition, is what you're saying. Okay, interesting. So let's move on to the customers that exist in specifically Latin America today. Who are these customers? If you guys, all 3 of you could respond to this question. What do they look like? Do they look like the people in the audience? Like, who are you working with now? Because we've talked about this growing middle class in Latin America that is hungry for technology, but what does that mean?
Yeah, well, in fact, since for the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years, we've been, growing. Our growth product is growing, and there's more people, going in, being able to have acquired products and purchase and etc. I would say that we still are a little bit laggard compared to the US in terms of technology. Yeah, exactly. In terms of technology adoption, I would say that we are between 3 to 5 years laggard, which is not a bad thing, in fact, because we are all learning in the process. So people are willing and eager to buy technology and doing stuff. So just to keep up with the rest of the world. So that's a good thing, because in fact they are trying to buy a product, but on the other hand, they really like, and especially, for example, as she said, in Brazil, they are pretty, willing to buy products, local products. So, as she said, it's pretty difficult to enter the Brazilian market if you don't go there with a partner. And probably they would like to have someone speaking Portuguese and have the, the product in their own language. While in Argentina, for example, we really like to try products and use it for free. And we always find a way not to pay for it. So it's tricky, and you have to work on that and explain where there's a value. And then why they need to pay for a product they use. While, for example, Chile, they are more serious and more, the American way in a way. So they just pay for a product they find that's what they're looking for. So each country and each market, even if we are all, part of a region, have some, twist, and you have to take care and pay a lot of attention on, the way you're doing business in each country.
Fascinating.
In Mexico has been hungry and growing in a lot of areas, especially technology and design, that for us is a complete benefit. The startup world is growing a lot. We're starting to see a lot of communities aside from the startup world, like from women, from engineers, from designers, from architects. And what we do is we try to attack those kind of people to interact with us, to see what our products are like, what are they doing, how are they innovating in a certain way in our economy, in the country, what is their state of mind according to how the world sees us and how everything is going around. And also something that I've noticed is that Mexico is trying to do more stuff with Latin America, especially Brazil and Argentina, rather than the US, even though we're really close neighbors, which is kind of interesting because we see rising technologies and rising companies that people wouldn't even imagine 5 years ago, and seeing all this innovation. So we're trying to approach that kind of people.
Well, I would say the general guidance, the company has to figure out early on what your strategy is. Are you B2B, are you B2C? Don't try to do everything. If you want to sell to consumers, that's one strategy. If you want to sell to businesses, figure out your partners and make them be your best sales force. Now, with the businesses you ladies described, I would imagine that you will have to go to the consumers in your respective markets. But if you look at the growing market, which is a combination of everything you can do online, plus those brick and mortars, have you noticed how even big companies like Microsoft now want to open their own stores, right? Next thing you know, Amazon will go back opening stores. So you have to be always on the lookout what's your best strategy is. But then an interesting phenomenon we've observed in our business that sometimes a necessity creates a new business model. Like, if I tell you that the mobile payments are better developed in emerging markets than in developed markets, you probably will not be surprised, those who actually work in the emerging markets, right? When you can use your, I know that one of my friends, when they first got this app on the phone, oh yeah, I can buy a Starbucks coffee, I go like, big deal, I've seen it several years ago in Rio and in Moscow and in China. Why? Because the banking system was not as developed. So people came up with all kinds of solutions which allowed them to make those quick payments. The same with loans. I just got back from New York where we're judging the IBM SmartCamp competition. The company which won was from Kenya. And they won over a cybersecurity firm from Virginia and a lot of other interesting contenders. Why? Because they figured out their business model and they're doing microloans, which they call nano loans. So what I'm saying that, and now they will go global, which I'm a bit skeptical about, but Latin America actually they might do. So what I'm saying that know the market, not just yours, but of your neighbors, and always keep an eye on the largest market. And the largest technology market still is here in the US. So if you think you have a chance of grabbing a share, even a small share of the global market, absolutely have your presence in the US.
Excellent. So interesting advice from different perspectives. The last question is really about the sea change we're seeing in the ecosystems in the countries, say Mexico, say Argentina, other parts of Latin America. Our friends at 500 Startups, for example, have huge partnerships with Mexican.vc, and they're doing all sorts of other work. So there's ecosystems now being built. Women 2.0 is in both of your countries and other countries in Latin America because we are seeing the demand for local founders. Tell me a little bit about what's going on locally.
Well, it totally changed. When we started, I would say 6 years ago, there was no ecosystem at all. In fact, even if we had a really strong entrepreneurial community or background or community, the truth is that you just were an entrepreneur because you were looking for a job. You were totally screwed. There was no job out there, so it was the only way for you to make a living. So I remember when I told my parents, I'm leaving the huge corporation just to start a company, they stared at me like, you're insane. What are you talking about? Yeah, it was the same thing as telling them that I was totally hippie and I was, just going to sleep in any square or whatever. And the truth is that, after a couple of years, a month, and they've saw that they've just seen that I was for real, they really start supporting me, and in fact, they start helping me to do other stuff. So with a lot of people, we try to just pro bono, and because we were there, tried to build a community. And then when Women 2.0 came up, and there's a lot of incubators like 500 Startups with the local version, and Waira from the Telefonica group settling there and trying to build a community out of it. And there's now more investor firms willing to invest. Well, I don't want to, don't take me the wrong way, but the truth is that when we talk about investment in Latin America, most of the time we talk about Brazil. And I would say that Brazil, it's true, is part of Latin America, but it is a totally different world from the rest of the Latin America. From scratch, we speak different languages. So most of the venture firms talk about going to Latin, but in fact, they focus just in Brazil. So in a way, I kind of forced to go there just to be able to raise capital or have a market there. So I would say that now that there's more incubators and stuff growing, there's more people willing to put their money in other countries apart from Brazil. So I would say we still have a lot of things to do and work on it, but we're growing, and I think we're in the right direction.
Observations from you as the ecosystems are changing?
I would say that the biggest challenge entrepreneurs have around the world, outside Silicon Valley probably, is the acceptance of that infamous failure. It is allowed to fail, pick up and go, time and again, and we all learn from mistakes. I disagree here with what our statistics you show. People usually learn from mistakes, but you're allowed to make them. Outside US, be it Europe or emerging markets, there's the stigma. If you failed once, then nobody will give you money again. And that is something which is really hard for the first-time entrepreneurs. And another thing, entrepreneur is a hero here, right? Everybody wants to be Mark, Eric, Sergey, whatever. But if you go to Kenya, Brazil, or Russia is changing a little now, and when mothers are talking to each other, oh, my son is a doctor, my son is a lawyer, oh, my son is an entrepreneur. What's wrong with you, right? So that's something which was changing gradually, and I think that networks like this one, Women 2.0, and whatever incubators around the world are really helping to change the culture, and I think that's the most important thing we need to work on.
Great observation. Linda, any final thoughts?
Well, I have worked on my own. This is my third startup for the past 5 years, and I have seen a huge difference in every angle, especially in the startup world. And from incubator, well, I'm part of Guayras First Generation in Mexico City. It's an incubator from Telefonica. And in Mexico, for example, the government is trying to support a lot of people another way to earn a living. So aside from everything that's going on, they're trying to promote for you to go out and do goal. If maybe a business, your father's business didn't work out, they are encouraging you to go out and do it yourself. And I think that is pretty good, because from other places I've been, I've seen that our country is not that bad from government having the help. So it's good to have that support.
Awesome. So I bet you probably wouldn't have expected to hear what you heard on this panel today, because these are people that you don't normally hear from. First of all, most of them don't live here other than Alexandra. And that was the idea of this panel, to show you that, guess what? You guys may be in the room here in the US working on your startups, but you guys got competition. Okay, great. That's it. Thank you much. And we're going to go to the questions. So I guess the two, I know I can't see anything either. If anyone has questions, the mics are on the left and the right. Everyone's tired. One question, anyone? Someone walking up to the mic or just walking to their seat? I can't see. Did someone say yes? Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, my name is Gloria Campbell, and I'm actually one of the Kaplar Scholarship winners to attend this event, so thank you to them. They were talking about diversity in women in startups, and you were talking at once about the racism aspect. So what advice do you have for people of diverse backgrounds who are getting rejected based on race, and not to use that as a hurdle and get over it and keep going?
So the question was, it's hard to hear and see up here. So the question was, how do people deal with racism when it comes to entrepreneurship?
So it has been difficult for us in that kind of way, and also because we have been in crowdfunding. So when you talk about crowdfunding, it's something that people don't really know about it just yet. So when you say, hey, pay whatever reward and you will get something 2 months later, it's something that they doubt. So what we have done is create like the perfect customer service. So it's like take them by the hand, even like face to face. You have to click here, then go here. I promise I'm not gonna clone your credit card. Everything's gonna be okay. And in that way, we have created certain community and that have bought once, and from the response that they have gotten, they have been able to buy again.
Excellent. Lots of challenges ahead. Thank you for flying all the way in. Thank you, Alexandra, for joining with the investment panel as well for the perspectives of the world. Thank you for this panel.
Thank you.